So I'm here this morning with Ryan from Ryan's Pest Control, and we're at one of our properties that's currently under contract, and we're going to go through and do a WDO inspection, which is a wood-destroying organisms, which is going to include termites, ants, anything that could affect the property. So what Ryan's going to do is he's going to tell us a little bit about what you should look for in a good WDO inspection, or what you need to look for around your home just on regular maintenance, so that you know if you're going to have termite problems or if you need to get a hold of a professional pest company. So Ryan, just wanted to say hi there.
Good morning, how are you?
Good morning, great. So to get started here, what's the most important thing from a WDO inspection?
Okay, most important thing is obviously you have depending on contingency period in order to do these inspections to make an informed decision as a buyer. Now you did. So the state of Florida determines what is wood destroying. They provide the forms that we report on. They license us. It is an inspection made on what is visible and accessible at the time. It does not constitute any form of guarantee. What is wood destroying in the state's eyes is your termite groups, certain beetles, and fungus, which is a fancy name for wood rot.
Okay.
So those are the things we look at. When I approach a house, the first thing I'll do is I'll look at the house, how it's constructed, and know typically where the problems will be. We'll also determine, depending on what is visible to us as far as previous signs of treatment, what has been done, and this is a whole package deal that we can present to the buyer so they can make an informed decision.
Okay, great. And on this property, this is a property that's only 4 years old.
Correct.
So on a property that's 4 years old, do you even need to do a WDO inspection? I mean,
after 34 years of doing this, out of 43,000 real estate inspections, I've found termites in houses that are not even finished being built.
Holy smokes, okay.
So some of the pre-treat methods, obviously over the years, have changed significantly. And even though they're legal and legitimate, I don't agree, or I'm not a fan of some of these
Right.
things, and see consistent problems after the fact. So, heck yeah, termites don't care how old it is. Actually, on the contrary, the newer pine, which comes from tree to house in 5 to 8 years, is much more palatable to them than the old stuff.
All right,
Although they'll eat it all.
Yeah, no, okay, well, great, that makes sense. But what about a block home? Because this is also a block home with stucco cover. I mean, does that really need it? Where's the wood?
One
Why do
of
we
my
need that?
favorite questions of all time. So, the only difference between a block home and a frame home is the load-bearing walls. Everything within is exactly the same. Your doors, your jambs, your trim pieces, your truss system, the drywall, the paper on the drywall. And what happens if they come up a plumbing line in the middle of the house? What good are your block walls then? They're into the framing.
Right.
So one can never be complacent on how it's constructed unless it's completely concrete and metal.
Everything's concrete.
Everything's good. Then I'll say, okay, don't worry about it.
Okay.
Having said that, then when you put your bookcase against the wall, they come up and eat your bookcase,
Right.
which I've seen as well. So
Okay. All right, great. So what I'll do is I'm going to follow you around and see you point out a few things that might be beneficial for homeowners to look at, for us to look at. If you see anything such as bushes that may be too close, or whatever. I know you check a variety of different things.
Sure.
Anything you can point out will be helpful. I'll certainly appreciate that.
No problem.
All
Let's
right,
go.
thanks. All right. All right.
Okay, so Walter, a common question I ask as I'm walking around doing what I'm doing right now is, what are you looking for? So, as far as termites go, they're going to present themselves in several ways. You're going to have exit holes through the wall where they tunnel, they eat the paper, they tunnel through the drywall, and then they create a little exit hole. They'll put a little sand plug there. If one looks at a wall, it looks largely flat, but you put a light up against it, suddenly it's showing all the inconsistencies. Even though this is inconsistencies that are desirable as far as the texture, it'll also show signs of termite.
Okay, great.
Okay, so one of the most important parts of an inspection, typically on the electrical panel, any type of application or inspection, a certified operator or like pest control companies obligated to put some type of notice. So this appears to be the inspection sequence from Turner Pest Control. It is supposed to say what was done at the time of pre-treat. I don't see that. I take that back. Here it is right now. So this is a combination of soil and bait. This will allow me to present to a buyer exactly what's been done. It appears, based on the history of the inspection, that it was kept up through 2018. So one would have to either ask the seller or call the company to find out if it's still current.
Okay,
and
great.
transferable.
Now, does that tell you if there's a bond on the property, or does that just tell you then there's a treatment and an inspection?
All indications are that there was a bond because the initial application was done in 2016 and subsequent inspections in 16, 17, and 18 would indicate that they've kept up some type of warranty. However, we are in 2020.
Okay.
So they're not obligated to put reinspection dates on here. So I would always recommend, number one, looking at the disclosure, number two, calling the company to determine if it's still active.
Okay. And so why would somebody come out every year? Like, what's the purpose of that? Is that just part of the bonding, or is that, were there problems that we need to be concerned about?
I mean, bonding is almost ambiguous. It's a service warranty anymore. So the reason we come out is to limit a problem in the event that there was one.
Okay.
So we might see stuff that the homeowner typically will not see, and then can address it before it causes any damage.
Okay, so seeing that they've been out here every year, I don't need to be concerned that there's a major termite problem and the house is getting ready to fall apart.
Absolutely not. It's actually beneficial as far as I'm concerned.
All right, fantastic. Cool. Thanks.
Walter, this would be an example of exactly what I was referring to. So you have your washer and dryer here in the middle of the house. The service lines are coming up right here. So these are either teed off a plumbing supply somewhere, or they actually physically come up to the slab and right into a frame wall. Going on based on what we said earlier, what good would your block walls be in a case like this?
Right, so they could come in from the ground, crawl up that pipe, and then start eating the wood here.
Alongside the pipe, they need 1/64 of an inch to access the house.
Okay.
And they could start eating where we would find exit holes. Perhaps the homeowner would find swarming in the event of an active infestation. So areas obviously we pay close attention to.
And what would we look for here? What are you looking for here to see if you see anything, so that if I was a homeowner on a regular day, what would I notice that would be a problem?
Probably potentially some sand deposits as far as subterranean go. Little sand plugs here. When I'm inspecting, obviously I'm going to look at the drywall, I'm going to look at the baseboard, because that will be the first piece of palatable wood that they're going to find outside the bottom plate, which is typically pressure treated, which they won't eat.
Okay, so little dusty things around the floor, around the water lines there, something like that, like kind of sandy, dusty.
Correct.
Things would at least be something to be an alert to pay attention to.
Sure. So mostly what homeowners find, number one, swarming. They'll come home and there's 8,000 bugs flying around your house. You can't really miss that.
Right.
Secondly, we'd be banging a vacuum into a baseboard and seeing some damage or something like that, or consistent sand deposits where there might be some filtration from the tunnels that are being constructed by the termites.
Okay.
Or little sand dots, just stuff that looks odd.
Okay, awesome, thanks.
All right, Walter, so another thing that people don't realize, it's not just the structure that's in place, but it's also the stuff that is brought in. I have tented countless houses for drywood termites because, unbeknownst to the people or the cabinet maker, they were already in the wood when the cabinet was fabricated. In this case, these are mostly prefabricated stuff. The doors are real wood. But I have tented many a house from drywood termites that are introduced into the house.
Really? Wow, okay, great, good to know.
Via cabinets, and one also has to be careful, especially antique people that like to pick stuff off the side of the road. Can be riddled with termites. Drywood, bring it into your house, they swarm out of your furniture, and now you've got a problem in the house.
Okay, so you mentioned drywood, so there's basically, what, two types of termites?
There's more than two types. Primarily what we deal with is drywood and subterranean.
Okay.
There's damp wood, there's formosan that I have running into this area. And then your platypus beetles, your wood borers, and your wood rot are primarily what we're looking for, and dictated to by the state, as I said earlier.
Okay, great. So Ryan, what happens when, like, say the cabinets did have some kind of drywood termites that were brought in from there or something like that? How are you, one, how do we treat that? And then two, how do we protect ourselves? Or, is that covered with your homeowner's insurance? Who helps you with the cost of taking care of this damage?
It's a great question. Homeowner's insurance wants nothing to do with termite. Termites in the United States cause more damage than everything that you insure your house for combined.
Wow.
So with the difference being, you can pay $600 to turn a Cat 5 hurricane around in the ocean where you can to prevent subterranean termites. In the case of a situation like this where it's a newer house and they were introduced in the cabinets, we determine three things. Are they limited to there? Have they swarmed? And can we resolve it by spot treating it or simply removing the cabinets, which both are options depending on the situation.
Okay.
Swarming becomes a concern because that's the means of spreading. So where have they come from? Where have they gone to at that point? As previous stated, there was a house in Palm Coast where a brand new house, custom bookcase built around the fireplace, and they introduced drywood termites and they swarmed, and the builder went ahead and tented the house for a lady that her house wasn't even a year old.
Okay, wow.
A realtor, ironically.
Right, yeah. So drywood termites then fly. They would have wings and they would fly and swarm in. Is that what I understand? And subterranean would come from the ground.
Okay, both swarm. It's a social network of castes.
Okay.
We have the queen, the workers, the swarmers, the soldiers. So both subterranean and drywood swarm. Subterranean have to go back to the ground. They have to have a moisture source in order to perpetuate their life cycle. Dry woods do not. That's the name dry wood. They live within the confinements of dry wood and can survive by extracting enough moisture. Dry wood colonies are very typically very small. Subterranean colonies can be massive.
Okay, and they would be in the ground massive, and you'd have no idea they're around unless you find them. Is that correct?
Correct, and they're tunneling 24/7, 365, trying to find a cellulose source. I mean, the function in nature, all termites, is to speed up the process of decay. So this is a huge, big dead tree to them.
So what would be the way to protect yourself from that? You mentioned $600 or something like that. So how do you protect yourself either from dry wood or subterranean?
Dry wood become a lot less likely in newer subdivisions. They're not immune, as I previously stated. They're more prevalent in the older parts of Daytona, where you've got 100-year-old houses. They had no means of control back there. They just lived with them, and they swarmed from structure to structure. Obviously, all those houses are wood-sided, a lot of exposure as far as wood goes, whereas in a newer home like this, you really have just your door jambs.
Okay.
From a drywood standpoint, subterranean, out the window. They can get into anything new or old.
Any way they can get into the house.
1/64 of an inch.
So the idea with subterranean then is to keep a barrier to keep them away. So what then would keep them away?
So there are several means of control. The one that I have preferred to use is Termidor. It's a liquid that's introduced into the soil, and as those foraging termites interact with it, they're infected but do not know it. They interact with the rest of the colony and actually eliminates the whole colony. Does not just create a barrier for them getting into the house.
Okay, so it actually goes back and kills off
the whole
rest
colony.
of
Yeah, and there's on average size property is 3 to 5 million in the ground on average.
Wow. Okay.
They're everywhere.
Everywhere. Okay. So obviously that's a very important thing for people to consider is getting a bond on their home.
Just treat it. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It really is. Discussed earlier, you insure it for everything else, but you can prevent termites, which will have a much higher chance of destroying the house for very little money. So whether it be me or anybody else, you have a relationship with somebody, treat it.
Okay, now I've heard of different types of bonds. I've heard of treatment bonds versus repair bonds and so forth. So is there a difference still out there, or is there anything we need to be concerned about to know we're with a good company that's bonding us well?
There is. Prior to 2000, you were nuts not having damage coverage. In my opinion, after 2000 in Termidor, it's overkill to have damage coverage. I have, in the last 20 years, used nothing but that product for subterranean termites. I've had to retreat 10 houses. Of those 10 houses, 3 pieces of flooring was the most damage that was in that house, because with inspections and the homeowners being observant, they found it. So you can limit it. So the money you save, as opposed to not having to pay for damage coverage, where there's a million ways to get out of it, including my contract. I offer it. I think I have 3 people that have damage coverage.
Right. So damage coverage is going to cost considerably more, and with the Termidor being such a good barrier, a good way of killing off the colony, you don't feel that you really need to have that damage replacement or damage repair treatment.
I don't, and I have a 20-year track record of proving that.
Okay, great.
That is me. Some people don't feel that way. Some people want $5 million worth of coverage, which if you ever use it, you need to change pest control companies. Right. So what we've been able to do is provide a homeowner with the best product on the market available today, do a great job, and save them money. We retreat it for free every 10 years as long as they've kept up their renewal.
Okay.
Okay, so this, if you look down here, would be consistent with the treatment sticker. So this is a bait station. It's a proprietary bait station, I believe, to the Turner, the company that's treating it. Centricon is probably the most common one. It works in a similar fashion. Quite frankly, I don't know the exact chemistry of this one, but it's also a colony elimination system. So when the house was built, there was a liquid application done under the slab, and as what we call a vertical final, they chose to do the bait stations. The perimeter application, as well as attached slab where driveways and patios meet the house, were put into the building code by us because we got sick of seeing what the builders were doing. We would see the problems after the fact, ask them to change, and they didn't. So it was put in the building code. Huge positive for homeowners.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep. So Walter, a great positive, draining system with shedding water away from the house is always a good idea. Another thing that the pest control, when I say we, the industry instituted at that same time in the building code, was stopping the stucco before it got below grade, so you could clearly see a mud tunnel going up under the stucco in the tiniest of cracks. It's supposed to be 6 inches, so in this case, that would be good. In this case, the homeowner's landscaping in stone has actually come up a little too high, and it should be pulled back. Okay, so 2 things have happened here. A little bit of overgrowth, as well as the stone covering up that gap that we're trying to maintain. Overgrowth, why? Even if you had pest control service in a case like this, insects, ants now have a bridge around your barrier down low to get into the house. When it gets more extreme with a tree or something, then it becomes a rodent problem as well, which we do tons of work and have to advise homeowners to clear stuff. Keep it away from the house. It's always best. Maintains moisture, which is obviously conducive for termite, as well as makes visibility and inspection difficult. So Walter, this would be another situation consistent with what I was talking about, the change in the building code. So even though they set this travertine down, great, they put a drain here to shed the excess pool and rainwater, but where this now touches the house, you no longer have that gap. So by code, this would have been pre-treated prior to them setting the stone down.
Okay.
All right, guys, so we've completed the inspection. Everything looks great. Just some things that I can recommend to folks from my experience is that you're spending anywhere from $250,000 to $600,000 on a house. To pay a professional less than $100 to look at it prior to purchasing it is an absolute no-brainer. Even in the cases that is with this one, there's nothing wrong. But in those ones that there are, it gives you choices. Even ones that have bonds, people say, I'm not going to inspect it. Okay, that bond might be for subterranean. What happens if I find drywoods? You no longer have an option once you've closed on that home other than to deal with it. Whereas you could have made a deal with the existing homeowner, decided to back out in lieu of spending $100 and not doing an inspection. These inspections are made on what is visible and accessible. We do not move anything. It is not an invasive inspection, although we do probe once damage is found to determine what it is. But I cannot emphasize enough, whether it be me or any other professional, do your WDO before you close on your house.